Hello, everyone, and welcome to our virtual Elastic user group meetup. We're going to get started here shortly. Just wanted to run through a few agenda items. So real quick, we'll start with intros on the Elastic side. So my name is Olivia Petrie. I'm a DevRel program manager, and I'm also joined by Justin here.
Hello. I am Justin Castilla. I am a new senior developer advocate at Elastic.
Awesome. So a few agenda items before we get into Joseph's presentation. I want to review some upcoming events. Of course, we have a meetup raffle, some more details on how to get involved, and then we'll turn it over to Joseph. We will have a Q&A at the end, so if you have any questions throughout the presentation, feel free to pop those over in the chat, and we'll get to them after Joseph wraps up his presentation. A few upcoming events. So I listed out our US, LATAM, and Canada events for the summer. This is what's currently scheduled. I have a link to our upcoming events page in the next slide or the next two slides where you can scan the QR code and take a look at what's upcoming in your neighborhood. If you're joining from Europe, APJ, anything like that, we have events there as well. So definitely take a look and see if there's anything in your area. As usual, we have our meetup raffle, so feel free to scan the QR code right here. I'll also post the link in the chat just in a second once Joseph starts his presentation. Just a quick 1 to 2 minute raffle questionnaire, and we'll pick a winner this afternoon, and I'll notify you if you won, and you'll get some Elastic swag. What now? So if you are interested in presenting, whether it's in person or virtual like this meetup, definitely reach out to us, meetups@elastic.co. We love to hear your use case, whether you're a beginner, intermediate, advanced Elastic user, all is welcome. So definitely let us know. And then this is the QR code you can scan right here. I'll post the link in the chat if you don't get around to it, and take a look at what's upcoming. We also have Discuss, which is a great resource to get your Elastic questions answered. Our community YouTube channel, community Slack workspace. We'll post all those links there as well. These are great resources to, if you have questions, if you're stuck, post them in there, and the community can help you out. And with that, I will turn it over to our featured presenter, Joseph, who will be presenting seamless monitoring with OpenTelemetry, telemetry, ECK, and Kubernetes. Cool. Let me put you on there. And here he is, Joseph. There you go, Joseph.
All right, there I am. All right, cool. Thank you so much. All right, so like Olivia said, this is going to be on OpenTelemetry, ECK, and Kubernetes. And basically, I just wanted to take a quick step and just and talk about what my experience is with Elastic. So again, my name is Joseph Whitaker. I'm a full stack developer from everything from UI backend to Kubernetes cloud. So full stack, but it all blends together. So personal experience, professionally, I've worked with the geolocation and search for a project. Can't get into too much of the details of that because of contract, whatever the term is. But we can't really talk too much about that project. But this project, we basically use Elastic to collect our Kubernetes logs with FluentD. And basically we did that with dev environments and all. It was for a internal workflow project, and now was working a lot with the application performance monitoring for this presentation. So really getting up to speed with that and exploring that for this presentation. So this talk, I wanted to do a couple things. I just wanted to go over the basics so that, even if you're not familiar with it, you can follow along and you're not like totally lost. We're going to go over how we're going to run all this locally, the why, talk about, what we're connecting to it, and then, some of the features and pros and cons from, running this locally and all. All right. So what is Elasticsearch? There is a really, there's a lot of different ways to answer that, but basically it is a search platform database, engine. Basically allows you to search really fast and index through those things. Kibana is basically the visualization tool, and Elastic APM is basically the application monitoring tool that can integrate with Elastic and Kibana. So, simply put, for me, I'm a very visual learner. So seeing, our applications will be connecting to APM, and then we'll be able to view all that data in Kibana. All right. So how exactly are we going to run this locally? The way that we're going to run this locally is we are going to be using Kubernetes, and we are going to be using Rancher Desktop. If you have Docker Desktop or Podman Desktop, that works just fine. I personally am just going to be using Rancher Desktop because I'm a big fan of the dashboard. And I think it just, for me, it simplifies things, and it's just how I learned Kubernetes and all. So why would I run this using Kubernetes over like containers or just running it on my VM? And the reason that I would use Kubernetes is because of the consistency. So, right here, we can see that through this mermaid chart that we have, all these pieces connect, and they would all work on Kubernetes, and these transfer to every cloud and locally. So, I could have added that too, but it's basically adding consistency. And one note is that while this is running on Kubernetes locally with the free license, if I was going into production, I probably would get a license. So that way, if something goes wrong, I would feel a lot more comfortable getting help and figuring something out if there was an incident to occur. Okay. So how are we going to be deploying these locally with Kubernetes? We're going to be using operators. Operators are essentially, there's a lot to unpack with that, but essentially what I'm going to keep it at is a way to make Kubernetes very easy. So essentially we are declaratively defining a resource, an Elasticsearch resource, a Kibana resource, and an APM server resource. And it's really simple, as we see through the pictures. And it's declarative. So that means you're stating what you want in the file, and you're letting Kubernetes get to that point, which is a lot easier from my experience than using something more imperative like Ansible. All right. So what are we going to be using to connect to these? We're actually going to be using a .NET Aspire project, and we're going to be using Quarkus. And we could, and I kind of want to go back to this and touch on this. So you have multiple different ways to connect to APM, and there's been actually some community talks specifically about this, and I don't have a link or anything, but you can connect to APM using OpenTelemetry. There's been some really great talks that have been, on the Elastic community channel about this, and it basically is saying the same thing I'm about to say, is that you have a open standard, so that if you have a Go, a Java, or a Python app, you are basically able to use the same sort of patterns of saying, hey, this is my OpenTelemetry endpoint, and it's going to basically function the same way So they're all going to be pushing the same metrics, or not the same metrics, but the same in the same fashion, pushing metrics in the same fashion. So it's just a standard, reducing the amount of ways you have to do things, which increases focus. And that ties in with the Kubernetes. So we're consolidating our tooling, and we're able to do that. And I think Elastic APM is a great tool to do that. You're consolidating, because you could go with Jaeger and have Grafana dashboards and then have Sentry set up. And those tools are great. But if you're wanting just a all-in-one and just able to get these things going using the same Elastic tooling, you're able to get all those same features and have what I would personally would feel is a more simple deployment process and setting up. So it makes your day 1 and day 2 operations fairly simple. But again, those tools, if you opt to go for something else, those will work great. So I don't want to seem like I'm talking down on those. Cool. All right. So I'll go through these and show you what I have right here. I set up a GitHub repo. So if you're like, oh, I didn't really follow the code, I'm going to open up my repo here. So I have this Elastic APM Spike repo. I basically have instructions and all, and kind of talk about, I have the applications and all that stuff. So if you're like, hey, I want to mess with this myself, I want to look at it, I want to, just get my hands on it myself. Again, here's the GitHub, page and all, and I believe the link is already in the actual event page, so the meetup page. So I'm gonna pull this up locally, and I'm using VS Code. If you have another editor, that's fine. But essentially, I'm going to quickly show just how simple this is to set up. It shouldn't be too long. Let's see how we're doing on time. I think, yeah, we're doing fine on time. All right. So right here in this repo, we have our Kubernetes Helm chart. This is how we're going to deploy our CRDs into our local cluster. And we are running our cluster again via Rancher Desktop. So, like I said earlier, we get a dashboard, we get all those things with that. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to just go through these really quick. This literally will be very simple. What we're going to do is we're going to open up a terminal, and I'm going to bring that thing here so that we can all see it. And I'm actually going to put it side by side to make this easier for us. All right. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be installing this operator framework. For those who are not too familiar with operator, like I was bringing up earlier, Operator Hub, if you are a OpenShift user, you're going to be very familiar with this. If you just normally use Kubernetes, you tend not to see too much operator use. Not to say that you cannot use operators in regular Kubernetes clusters. But if we actually go here, we can find ECK. So we have our Elastic operators. And these really, really simplify things for us because it allows us to just define an APM server in this simple YAML. And like I was saying earlier on this slide, I had an old post where I set this up where I had the Fluentd and the Elastic set up without these, and it's not difficult to manage, but it was definitely not as simple and streamlined. So I've really enjoyed working with these and doing this demo. And, these are kind of going to be a part of my essential stack when working with Kubernetes. It seems like, because this was super easy. But anyway, I'm just going to install it and we're going to go from there. So I'm going to be using WSL to install this because it will not work on Windows, but we're going to get out of that once we're there. So I am now installing it, the actual operator. I'm not going to get into too much details on how all that works, but we're able to exit this now. And now what we're going to do is we're going to create the custom resource definitions, and we're going to install all the things that we need. Okay, cool. Now, as we can see, we have our actual template files. So if you're familiar with Helm, you have these template files, and I did not go through and template this all out to fully utilize all the Helm features, but I just basically put these YAML files here. Very simple, just quick, and it looks very, very similar to what you would find on the actual ECK Kubernetes repo. I'll pull that up later, but this is very simple setup, less than like 100 lines. So basically what we're going to be doing is applying that. So if we come here, I'm going to come into here. We're running it, and it seemed it was successful. And what we're going to do now is we are going to run these commands in separate terminals just to sort of get these things working locally for us. So this is fairly straightforward. All we're going to do is we're going to copy, paste. No, don't copy that. Oop. Cool. All right. So, and then we're going to copy this into this own thing here, own terminal page here. And essentially what we have just done is we have port forwarded these. So when I deployed those, when I ran that Helm chart, we can see right here that we have our APM server, our Kibana instance running. And if we come down here, we can see we have our Elasticsearch stateful set running. And what we're now doing through that port forwarding is connecting our local host to the actual cluster running. And there's that. So our next thing to do is we're going to run these scripts, these little one-liners here to get the password for Kibana. And we are now going to go to Kibana. Since we port forwarded it. So we port forwarded it, like I said earlier. I'm going to go back here. As you can see, we have this service that ran. It's on 5601, and this is the container port or the pods port, and this is where we're connecting to it locally. So this is going to be on the host 5601. And if we just come here and we're going to go to 5601, this is going to pull up it's okay. You can just say continue to localhost. It's fine. It's running locally. It's all right. And this is where we're going to log in. Now, for those who aren't familiar, by default, your username is going to be Elastic when you're logging into Kibana. And we are able to get that secret through this command that I have here that was shown right here. Now, what I want to do though is I also want to show you the benefit of using Rancher to figure this out, because if you, like me personally, I'm not going to remember command line stuff. Like, I'll remember the basics, but something that specific, I'm never going to remember that. So it's a lot easier for me at times to use Rancher and to just come into here and simply look up Elastic user and get that same exact data. So if I come here and I go show that sensitive data, that's going to be 10K blah, blah, blah. If we come to our actual output of our command here, we're going to see the same thing. So, there's two different ways to do it. The command line is the more generic way, but there is a simpler way if you are using Rancher. If not, the command line will work just fine. There's nothing wrong with it. Just got to make sure you're running the right commands. So we're going to enter that in there. And we can add integrations. I'm going to take a beat on that, and I'm just going to explore it on my own just to show for those who may not be familiar with Kibana. We essentially now have a user interface that is connected to our Elasticsearch. And if you were to try to do this with Docker, you essentially are now going to have to start running some shell script or shell commands in the actual containers and getting certain values out of certain files, like passwords and certain things like that. With this operator and these custom resource definitions, it just automatically works. So in this case, you often would hear Kubernetes is very complicated and yada, yada, yada. But here's a very common occurrence of where it's actually simpler to use Kubernetes, because now we're not having to tinker with the containers and go and execute into them and all that. It's automatically connected to our Elasticsearch instance with our our reference property here. So anyway, sorry, I can go on and on about the Kubernetes stuff. I know some people that aren't familiar, gonna limit it. Okay, so if we come here, we're gonna see that we have a bunch of different things, right? So this talk is specifically on APM and all, and that's what we're really gonna focus on. But just know that there's more benefits. Not really gonna get into all the details of everything else, but there's a lot more things. Like I was saying earlier, you get a lot of benefits for errors, for SREs. You get a lot of things for actual data aggregations, for AI. I know that is a very big thing. I'm not too familiar with a lot of AI topics. I'm not going to pretend to be, but I know that a tool like Elastic will enable those who are very good at those they will be enabled to actually, have deliverables and, work with this stuff. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go to APM, and we can see that we need to add the integration. So this is going to be fairly simple. We're going to click add. And this is fine. This is fine. This is fine. We're going to allow it. And then what we're also going to do is we're going to say secret token. Now, obviously, this has got to be something way better than this for production, but for our purposes, it'll be fine. All right. And I'm going to add .NET, Java, OTLP. I'm sure that that's not the exact names. I'm just adding them just to make sure they work. All right. That should be good. So we're going to say save and continue. It'll take a second, but it'll work. Sorry, I've gone through that really fast. Are there like any questions or anything?
I think we're good at this point, Joseph.
Okay. All right. Sorry, I didn't know
No,
if that was
you're
too early. All right. All right. I'll just get through this. All right. So we see that it was added. All right. Cool. So I think we're all good to go. So we should be able to connect to this with our application and be good to go. So we're going to come into this part of our repo here, and we're going to go to source, and we're going to connect to our .NET application. We're going to open that into that repo. And for those who aren't too familiar with .NET Aspire, basically what this allows us to do is it allows us to have multiple applications and define them in a single file, not spot, but a single file that basically we now see the connections, like what connects to what and all. There's a ton of stuff on the internet, on YouTube about that. So if you're interested in all that, but we're going to come here and we can see that we have this Elastic extension class, and we're adding these OpenTelemetry environment variables. And then there's also Elastic APM ones. So like I was saying earlier, there's actually two ways you can connect to Elastic APM. You can connect via OpenTelemetry, which there's the OpenTelemetry bridge documentation page that you can find, or you can connect to it via a runtime agent. This would be our .NET agent. So you can actually even do either or both, and it works just fine. So we can do both, and it'll work just fine. And we can see here we have this thing called service defaults. This is a sort of way that Aspire allows you to consolidate your best practices and your sort of your golden paths of OpenTelemetry retries into a single project that can be reused throughout your other services. So right here we have this add service defaults and this map default endpoints. So what does that really mean, what I just said? That means that I can come into this API service, add map default endpoints, add service defaults, and I can come into this microservice or service and do the same thing. Yeah, I see it now. Okay, cool. So it basically just makes things a little bit simpler. And what they are actually doing in those methods is we can see that we actually have OpenTelemetry, health checks, and all that fancy jazz. That is really, it's a really nice to have now. And basically what we have done here is we have added the add all Elastic APM to our service container. So every single project by default is now going to have it.
So sorry to interrupt you. Can you increase the size of your font on your screen for us, please?
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, of course.
No worries. Maybe one more just to be safe.
Cool.
Gorgeous. Thank you.
All right. So Yeah, like I was saying, we're basically just adding all of these to each and every single project to consolidate it, and we're adding Elastic APM to each and every single project, and we are defining the environment variables that are being injected into those projects here. So it's could this been done in a cleaner way? Probably, but I think I'm just trying to like show, hey, we're able to keep it dry and insert best practices into all of our, whether it's a microservice, monolith, we're able to inject all those. So what I am going to need to do is, earlier I had this command here. We're going to get this secret here. This is what's going to allow us to connect to the APM. And we can see that's H something something. We're going to come here to our actual app host, into our development file. I'm going to put this here. And we can see here that we're actually getting these config values, right? And we're binding it. So what we're going to be doing is we're actually going to change this here, and we should be good to go. So if we come into here, we should just be able to run .NET Watch. And fingers crossed it works. So, all right. Cool. So we see our dashboard show up for Aspire. And what we can do now is we can go into this. And we're going to, this is a page where we have an API being called. So in APM now, we should see that there is a dependency, because if we go into here, into this weather page, I'm actually gonna go here, close that. All right. Yeah, so we can see that there is an actual API call being made on this page. So what we should see when we go into our actual Elastic, we're going to go into APM, and we can see it. And yep. Okay, should be working fine. Oh, yeah, this is normal. This is occurring because this is running locally. There is basically you need some bulky Elasticsearch databases to run this locally, to run properly in production. And we're not able to emulate that locally. So it should go away in a couple seconds. It's not highly available locally. But anyway, I'm just going to go through the actual Java app now. I know that Elastic 99.8% or something is written in Java, but we're going to go through the Quarkus. And basically, we are going to do something very similar that's a little bit simpler. Is we are going to shift gears into this Java app now, and we are going to look at this and see that we are using the APM attacher. So in the .NET app, we use the .NET agent. In this Quarkus app, we are using the Java agent. For those who are not familiar with Quarkus, it is a Red Hat spin on Spring Boot, so to speak. There's a little bit more to it than that, but I'll just keep the focus on what, Elastic and all that is. But we can see that we're just attaching, and that is just going to attach that jar. And the way we're connecting is very similar. We are able to use the OpenTelemetry and just enable the SDK. And by setting these variables, we are able to use the Elastic APM agent. So very similar approaches. I showed both. I showed the .NET application and the Java application using both. That is not necessary. So if we just wanted to say false and just wanted to use the OpenTelemetry for both, that is totally doable. And that is something that was actually, like I said earlier, talked about in another thing, and it is a very good approach. From what I saw using this, I was able to get more out of it just using the actual agents. So, and when using both, I got a lot more out of it. So that's why I'm showing both, is because personally, that was what I had as the best experience with it. But yeah, I think since that's not working at the moment, let's double check and see if it is. Okay, cool. It is. It's back. All right. So I guess actually we can go through and we can actually add this here. We're going to use that same token that we had earlier from the .NET app, and we're going to use that into this one. So we're going to copy that token here, and we're just going to paste that here. And then we're going to go right here. We're going to open that in an integrated terminal. I'm going to have to decrease it a little just so we can see the actual command run. I'll increase the font and once the command has run. But essentially we are going to run Quarkus dev. And we can see that it's building, and all right, so if I open up W, again, just like .NET Aspire, we are going to get a local UI running. That's why I kind of chose these, because these are very simple to work with. And I think if someone comes away with this going, oh, I learned the Elastic APM and I learned these two tools that make local development easy, that's a win. But we can come in here and we can see in the logs that it should be connecting. Oh, yeah. Let's try a secret token. That should be, I think that's what it is. Yeah. Anyway, I was having this error earlier. I was kind of expecting it, but we are able to see that it will be sending, and that basically we are going to be using the same approach for both to get those working. So this is normal. It was just a security error that I ran into here that wasn't able to figure out. Ran into this yesterday. That was the first time I ran into this issue, but It's fine. So yeah, I think that should be sort of the end of the actual demo of like those two attempting to connect. So are there any questions specifically on what was done or any of the tooling or anything?
Thank you so much for presenting. I really appreciate that. And I'll let some of the questions percolate up in our YouTube chat. But in the meantime, I kind of want to touch upon some of your methodologies or your software choices, if that's okay.
Sure.
I mean, I've never heard of Quarkus, and you kind of gave me that hot take of Red Hat Spring Boot. I was wondering if you could kind of talk a little bit more about Quarkus.
Oh, dude, I'm not a Java guy. Like I never learned it in college and high school or anything, but when I tried to learn Spring Boot, I kind of was a little lost, but Quarkus is basically a Java framework that has a ton of benefits in the sense that it is a Kubernetes first Java framework that basically uses GrailVM and you can build to the JVM, but it also has first class support for GrailVM. It has built-in support for using reactive and blocking APIs at the same time, and it kind of has this sort of golden path sort of way of organizing their Maven packages. So actually, if I can, is my screen still being shared?
Yeah.
Or okay, cool. So if we go to the actual Quarkus documentation, we can see that they have these extensions, and they are just basic Maven packages, but they have been sort of I don't want to say approved, but they have been sort of Quarkified and allow you to run in that native mode. Okay. There's so many things I'm just remembering about it because I also just remembered now that you also get just like with Aspire, you get that container orchestration. So if you add the Postgres extension, boom, the containers come up.
Right.
You also get that with the Elastic. So if you add the Elastic SDK to your Quarkus project, boom. So I don't think there's first class support for that in Aspire just yet, but there have been some community extensions and all that kind of stuff.
Okay, cool. Now this is really exciting because admittedly, I did learn Java in college, but the version number was in its single digits. I'll just put it that way. So this is really exciting. This is good to see. And thank you very much for sharing this.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
Also, can you talk a little bit about, because I really like your presentation. You're showing a lot of really cool new technologies. Can you talk a little bit more about Rancher Desktop and how you integrated that with your Elastic demo?
Sure. So to me, these tools, if you do you use Linux at all, or like any Ubuntu or ever or anything like those?
No, predominantly OS X for me, but you can assume that I'm using Ubuntu.
Okay. Well, I only ask not because of like any specific statement about Ubuntu or anything. It is more of the idea that these Kubernetes distros or tools are kind of all the same. They're just kind of different. Mm-hmm. So if you use Podman, right, you probably have a different set of tooling to get a cluster up. You would probably use Kind or the OpenShift local tooling. With Rancher, we are running K3S locally, and depending on the OS you run it on, it'll run differently. But essentially, I'm using Rancher for me to reduce cognitive load. So I'm using it as a UI. So I know a lot of people like, old fashioned want to go into PG admin or MySQL, that admin interface, and just make sure that what they just did works. And that is kind of the same thing for me with this. So when I deploy stuff, I want to make sure, hey, is this working? So it's really easy that I can come in here, I can view the actual events, and being able to view the actual workloads with our actual Elastic stuff. So we come in here, we could see our instances running, and I can come in here and I can view the logs and see what's happening. So not that I always need to do that, but if I need to, it's not difficult.
Yeah, no, that looks fantastic. Wow.
So
looks like we have somebody. The storyteller Nepal says we have used Loki with Elastic. Is this old-fashioned? Not sure if he's referring to Loki as old-fashioned or Rancher Desktop is old-fashioned.
I honestly don't. I don't really know how to. I actually don't have too much experience with Loki, to be honest. So I'm sure that there's I don't know. I actually have no opinion on it. I have no idea.
But that's fantastic. That's fine. That's perfectly fine. Yeah. Cool. Well, let me see if I have any more notes. Cool. And for anybody that was actually joining the talk a little bit later after your intro, can you kind of just give us like a review of like what you have built actually allows developers to do once you've had this up and running, once they have this up and running locally?
Yeah, sure. So essentially what I have done is I have used Kubernetes to build Elasticsearch with 3 instances, a Kibana, I think 2 Kibana containers, and 1 APM container, or technically pods, but basically set this up on my local cluster and was able to connect my applications to it locally. Is this overkill for local development? Probably. But it is a proof of concept of how do you get up quickly. So if you were to deploy this on AKS, EKS, GKE, or et cetera, this deployment process is going to be very similar. There will be a little modification here and there, but it's going to be the same thing. And once those are deployed, we are able to use .NET and be able to leverage the APM server to collect errors, collect logs, collect all those OpenTelemetry data in a streamlined way. And we're even able to leverage the Elastic agent to get even more data. And we are able to use this very similar process to do the same thing in Java and do that in Quarkus. But if you also want to do that in Spring Boot, the way I just showed will work the exact same way. So we just are now showing, all right, how do we deploy this? So from the ops side, but also show what are the benefits of doing all this effort on the dev side. So
awesome. Thank you. And can you show me one more time the Kibana? Can you show me some of the metrics that you were able to pick up?
Sure. So was not able to get the Quarkus one due to an auth error. I think I have a feeling what it is, but we're able to come in here. We're able to come in and, well, that's why last 15 minutes. Let's do last hour.
Nice.
I was like, oh boy. I'd be like, oh. So we can see here we have these transactions. I just did it like 30 minutes ago, so you only really see one thing, but we're able to see endpoints hit we're able to see our dependencies. So our other application or API is a dependency essentially here because we are making a request to it. We're able to see metrics, errors. There weren't any errors, so we're not going to see them.
Perfect.
The service map, I would, like I said earlier, if you are going into production, you aren't really comfortable, like you don't really feel too comfortable deploying it and managing it yourself, just save yourself the time and I would just get the actual license, and so that way you still have that cloud agnostic, but you still have support.
Gotcha. Thank you very much. It's always important to see that in our Elastic talk. And I actually have a little bit of a follow-up from the storyteller Nepal. His first message: in our Kubernetes environment, we use Rancher to manage deployments, which results in Rancher adding its own parameters and annotations to our manifest files. Continues on with, however, we also maintain a CI/CD pipeline using Argo CD, which ensures that our Git repository serves as the source of truth for these manifests. This discrepancy causes unwanted annotations and fields added by Rancher to persist in our manifests. Is there a process or method we can use to automatically remove these unwanted annotations? Wow.
I think I have a solution to that. I'm just spitballing because I haven't tried this myself, but I have a feeling if you use kubemod, it should be able to get rid of that. So those annotations, yeah, so I can actually pull that up. Kubemod is essentially going to mutate your actual resource before you apply it, and we actually see this here. So basically, before it's created, you're able to modify it. So I would try that. If that doesn't work, I don't know. So
that's fine. That's really great. That's an awesome resource. Thank you so much for fielding that question. That's kind of like 3 degrees away, but that was awesome. Well, cool. Thank you so much. Is there a way that people can follow you or reach out and look at more of your resources?
Sure. I do Medium. That's really what I do. Let me find the actual. Yeah, just Joseph Sims 1 at Joseph Sims 1. I post about a bunch of different things, and I also share those on LinkedIn as well. So, yeah, I don't normally post any of that stuff on like social media or anything, but this is kind of like the outlet if you're like wanting to have, these sort of topics. You're gonna see those there. So
awesome. Well, thank you so much. I think there are no further questions. I think that will conclude our today's talk.
Yeah, I think we're all set. Thank you, Joseph. This was really awesome and very detailed. And I think it was very helpful for our community. Yeah, I think other than that, again, if anyone is interested in presenting, we welcome talks. So definitely reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you. And with that, thank you again, Joseph. Thank you, Justin. And
thank you.
See you at the next one. Bye.
Thank you. See ya.
Thank you. Bye-bye.